Hey everyone, Pastor George here, and today I have a question regarding fighting, funnily enough. But this is actually like a real issue. The question is, how can a Christian ever win a UFC fight? If you turn the other cheek with intent of causing harm to the attacker, is that not just the same thing as intentionally causing the harm? So this is an interesting conundrum, and this might be something we don't usually think about. So UFC, for anyone who doesn't know, is mixed martial arts fighting competition stuff, prize fighting that started, I don't know how many years ago. I don't really follow it, but it's like boxing, but I guess more than just punching with fists, right? So, so can a Christian participate in the UFC? Basically, right? I mean, it's not even just win; is actually participate because it has this idea of fighting, of violence, of stuff like that, right? And it's a good question, and actually one that other Christians have thought about. So it wasn't in the UFC, but most famously Manny Pacquiao, who is a big boxer. He was retired now, but he uh he became a born again Christian, kind of like in the middle endish of his boxing career. And after he did that, apparently he really wrestled with the idea of actually fighting someone else because, like, if you're taught not to be violent, right, and to turn the other cheek, how do you participate in a sport where your whole object is fighting other person, right, and beating them up? Um, and so I think that's a really good question, and it applies to this UFC thing too, as well, right? Because as the person who asked this question points out, right, if we're called to turn the other cheek, even if you're called, turn the other cheek and with the intent of causing harm, right? It's can kind of be the same idea of just causing harm. It's just causing harm with extra steps, you could say, right? And so can a Christian box, right? Can a Christian do UFC or fighting or things like that uh, for money or for other things? And I think what's two things. So my short answer is yes, because I think intent here really matters. What your actual goal is of the fight, right? Is this a contest of athletics, sports? Type thing, or is it to harm someone, right? And two, just to look at like a historical example of this. So obviously, at the times that the Bible was written, especially the New Testament, you had new uh, Roman games that have been kind of sweeping the world by storm, right? Started in Italy, but like gladiatorial games by this point had kind of taken over, right? And Christians were always against gladiatorial games. Why? Because it was killing of people, right? A lot of times not consensual, like in the sense that there were slaves forced to fight and stuff like that. But that was seen as like not worthy of sport, even if the people agreed to it. You can't just go killing each other, right? So they took a stance against that. But interestingly enough, there were other sports and games at the time. One of them, well, were several of them, but one of them was boxing. But there was also the Greek sport of the pankration, which is basically like UFC today. Really, you could kick, punch, do everything but gouge eyes and hit people in the groin, right? Everything else was fair game, and that was part of the Olympics and stuff like that. And Paul uses boxers as a positive example in one of his letters, right? Like fighters training and stuff like that. He compares it to the Christian life. So I don't think that, that was a negative thing, right? Because that shows that Christians like Paul were engaging in sports in the sense of watching them or understanding them in a significant way, right? So we can't really say that just because violence is there, that means it's a bad thing, right? So that's why I return to the intent, and I think this is what allowed Manny Pacquiao to kind of wrap his mind around it and go back to just doing boxing and stuff like that. Was seeing that, is his intent to harm his opponent, like in the sense of like to out of rage or anger or to harm them permanently, right? No. I don't think that would be the case for him, right? And I don't think if you're doing UFC for the purpose of just winning combat in a form of sportsmanship, right, then that's fine. Because I think you could easily take this and apply it outside of combat sports, right, to football, right, or to hockey, or to more physical sports that require actual violent contact between people. Um, I think that would be taking it a little too far because what's the point when you're playing? The point is to win, but not to, ideally, it should never be to harm the other opponent on the team, right? If you're doing that, then you are actually attacking them and committing an act of violence, and that's bad. So I think that a Christian can win a UFC fight. It's just that, like, your intent is to win it, right? Not to harm the other opponent, right? You get them to tap out, knock them out, or whatever, and then you're a good sportsman outside of that. You don't try and harm them or break their spine or something. So it's a good question. And I think this is really important why it comes to intent when it comes to asking ethical or moral questions and stuff like that, which is wrapped up in our class on Sunday as well. So good question. You guys have a wonderful rest of your Thursday. I'll see you on Sunday for worship. And yeah, peace out.